Hello everyone, Refiloe Mpakanyane here, Associate Producer at African Tech Roundup, and I'm so glad to welcome you to the second installment of our special series at African Tech Roundup, which focuses on digital transformation on the African continent. Now, just a reminder, these conversations did take place on the sidelines of the very first, the inaugural NOVACOM Summit on digital transformation in Africa. And I was able to sit down and have conversations with C-suite leaders from across the continent who hold positions, important positions in the telecoms and adjacent industries. And what was really interesting and compelling about these conversations is that they are bringing the insights and the experience that their very unique jobs give them the advantage of. And just to listen to that insight and I guess the ability to survey the digital land, as it were, is really fascinating stuff. My guest on the second episode is Dr. Willie Oosthuysen. He's the CEO of Liquid Intelligent Technologies. They've got an incredibly broad footprint in over 20 countries on the African continent and a fibre optic network reaching over 110,000 kilometres. Who better than Dr. Willie Oosthuysen to lay out for us the challenges and in fact even the opportunities for investing in infrastructure on the continent. He's been able to think long and hard about how to do it best, but most importantly, how to have it benefit business as well as civilians. Check it out.
The speaking that you've been doing over the duration of the NOVACOM Summit, the NOVACOM Africa Summit, in the panel in which you took part, your focus as one of the participants was network resilience for digital transformation. And of course, it's a very broad subject. Some of the things that did come up as key challenges included power, physical infrastructure, regulatory frameworks in the various countries in which you operate, and of course, cost and a changing sector. But speak to me from a liquid intelligence perspective, what it is that you as the business are particularly either seized with or worried about in this context, in our current context.
Thanks. I think the key thing for us in terms of network resilience, it is, as you mentioned, the physical network. And power is a big issue in South Africa specifically now, but also in other parts of Africa. You need reliable power, you need power backups, investment in power is required, and it's really about the operating cost of networks in this environment that's important. But because we don't want to let our customers down, we do invest in extra operating costs like generators, fuel, etc. to keep these alive. So these are some of the challenges. When you look at regulatory requirements, it was about access to spectrum. We waited 15 years in South Africa to get the spectrum auction done, which happened last year. And then after the spectrum auction, of course, then the investments has to happen in build out for 4G, 5G, especially 5G capacity, etc. From a regulatory point of view, it is mainly about right-of-ways, making sure we've got consistency across the work. And there's some work going on now. So Liquid is part of a consortium called Association of Communications Technologies that has direct interface into our Minister of Telecommunications. And it's mainly about how do we speed up areas, for example, of right-of-ways. How do we get a digital format for that? Digital transformation in municipalities. Because sometimes some of them are very efficient. You can very quickly build fibre. Others are very slow. It takes you months to get these authorities to approve certain fibre-built areas, etc. So there's a few challenges. It's mainly about speed of execution that we have that will make us go faster in terms of the vision to build a network, pan-African.
Yeah, something that I'm quite sure a lot of founders, entrepreneurs, and people in the space would be particularly interested in is you mentioned the relationships, first of all, the consortium that you're a part of, but the relationships that you need to have with the relevant stakeholders in government in order to effectuate change, which, of course, in this instance does benefit society at large, aside from the business. But what have you found to be the key factor that either moves the needle or gets the necessary buy-in from those stakeholders? I mean, just this morning we woke up to a News 24 headline that reads, "No chance of passing urgent energy bill this year," says committee chair, right? And ostensibly, if this thing is passed ASAP, it makes everybody's lives easier, citizens, of course, but it enables businesses to do what they do. Obviously, create profit for their shareholders, but, engender an environment in which small businesses, medium-sized enterprises can thrive?
Yeah, we strongly believe at Liquid and also at Cassava Technologies that everybody has a right to be connected to the internet, at high speed. And it's very simple applications. People want to study online, as an example. There's a lot of free content available, but you need access to the internet. People want to work online. A lot of people, for example, work in the call center for Amazon. It's an online job to give people some good income to sustain themselves, but they need a broadband connection to do that. So we've worked with the Western Cape government as a good example, and also with the Eastern Cape government, where we connected schools, we connected healthcare facilities, as well as the public administration buildings, in a massive project similar to PPP, a private public participation program. And then we attract external investors. So it's not all just on Liquid's balance sheet.
Yes.
So it's really about connecting the capital to the projects that will make a difference in people's lives.
Yeah.
So we've connected schools. We also run 14,000 hotspots that provide free broadband access to people in Western Cape government, where the government then funds the backhaul services. So it's really where we believe we make real society impact projects at scale, where you connect 3,000 schools and clinics, for example, in Western Cape. We are now about 1,500 in the Eastern Cape and still another 1,500 to go, is really having the impact on people's lives, giving them access to broadband services, broadband access. Similar project we did for NLD 5 and 6, which is our national long-distance routes, where people can then get higher speed access to content. So it's really about society impacting and then getting the stakeholders from government involved in those areas. And we've really built a good formula for that in at least Western Cape government and Eastern Cape government now.
Yeah. Here's hoping other governments sit up and take note for all our benefits. Just staying with regulatory matters, I wonder, as you talk about, as you've mentioned in some previous interviews, building data centers and the vision that Liquid essentially has for its future and for growth. On the matter of data centers and, of course, optimizing your fiber optic footprint, do you look overseas to what other governments are doing in terms of anticipating what might then, and I'll say trickle down to the South African or the African, the Pan-African environment? And I say this looking at things, for instance, like the EU Commission formulating a goal around the Gigabit Infrastructure Act, right? Which essentially says that all citizens in the EU should have gigabit at least of connection by 2030. And of course, they're quite active in terms of trying to see around corner, trying to anticipate problems or issues. Yeah.
I think in South Africa, and I think broader Africa as well, we are quite lucky. Lucky is maybe the wrong word, but fortunate that we are consumers of technology mainly. And what I say about that is that a lot of the things that happens in the US and developed markets take 2 to 3 years to filter down to us. So we can see business models, we can see ways of work that is successful, and then replicate some of those in these areas.
Sure.
We can do ESL limitations in terms of geography, government, regulatory issues across different countries. Because, for example, the US is a whole continent in one country.
Yes.
Where Africa has got 53 different countries, different governments, different regulatory authorities, different rules that you have to maneuver in terms of those kind of areas. So in terms of building the extra capacity, the governments are now issuing some RFPs where we had the ministers say that everybody in South Africa should have 10 gigabit per data per month for free, and we do see now the requirements of that coming out, where government will subsidize some of that. And it's really to end up with saying that IT should be the fourth utility, subsidized also by government for indigent, or people who can't afford it, to deliver that, as it becomes almost like a human right to be connected.
Absolutely. That's a fascinating conversation, actually, that I'm quite keen on, but we'll pick up on that next time. Willie, what in your estimation could disrupt your business, either make things difficult or make conditions difficult for realizing the kind of growth that you're aiming for?
I think the one issue for any telco operator is we're a capital-intensive type business, so you need fuel to build fiber, to build data centers, etc. And the currency exchange rates is a big inhibitor. Sure. It might not derail the entire process, but it will slow it down that we have. Another one is power, access to electricity and sustainable power. A lot of our capital has to be redirected now. Instead of building our networks and capacity on networks, we have to make sure we build resilience into the networks. So we know one of the largest mobile operators in South Africa moved almost all the capital expenditure for next year, stopped expanding 5G networks and set out into build battery to the power stations or redundant power solutions to the power stations. And that is quite a common theme at the moment. It will not derail, but slows down the progress that we are wanting to make. So those are some of the big ones that we see.
Yeah.
And then I think regulatory issues is always to speed it up in different countries, because we have 54 different countries in Africa. The regulatory is always a slow down mechanism, because governments and regulatory authorities are always a step behind technology and innovators.
Allied, final one, the opportunities that do excite you, despite what we've just mentioned.
I think the opportunities that excite us at Liquid is really to be the vehicle that builds connectivity for every African. We have it also part of our vision statement, is that we're a technology company who will leave no African behind. And it's really about delivering all the services. So everybody in Africa should have the same experience. Whether you use Google in the US or in Europe or in Johannesburg or in Nairobi, you should have the same experience. People are entitled to have broadband access to the network and have the content as close as possible and have the same experience of quality that we have there. And that's really what we're busy building as a legacy in Africa, is that build the digital infrastructure, build the underlying networks, and bring the content to Africa.
Yeah. Lovely. Thank you so much for your time today. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for watching African Tech Roundup special edition on digital transformation on the African continent. You can leave your comments and your feedback below. And don't forget to check out the African Tech Roundup podcast on your favorite podcast platform. And of course, subscribe and like there. Check you out next time.